Explosions as Russia launches an invasion of Ukraine. Taiwan on alert. The president joins a list of countries supporting Ukraine while stepping up defenses. Vaccines for all. A new tech hub in South Korea gives hope that poorer countries will have a shot at making their own life-saving treatments. And how young people are remembering one of the darkest moments in Taiwan's history through music. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Ukraine's foreign minister has said a full-scale invasion of his country has begun after Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered a military operation in the eastern Donbas region of Ukraine. Explosions are now being heard in cities across the country. Putin's announcement came as global leaders gathering at the UN called on Moscow to stand back from the brink. James Chater reports.
Finally, the move many feared would come. Air raid sirens blare above the Ukrainian capital. The country's foreign minister announcing in a tweet, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has launched a full-scale invasion of his country. It's in response to this.
И во исполнение ратифицированных Федеральным собранием 22 февраля сего года договоров о дружбе и взаимопомощи с Донецкой Народной Республикой и Луганской Народной Республикой. Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
The Russian military has pushed into the two rebel-held regions of eastern Ukraine. Satellite images from Wednesday showed new Russian maneuvers in these places, just across the border from Ukraine's second city of Kharkiv, where explosions were reported. Plumes of smoke rising over Ukraine's second city, home to 1.5 million people. And in the capital, Kyiv, an ominous rumble as the city was rocked with the first explosion since Russia started amassing troops near the border with Ukraine late last year. Putin made his announcement while his representative to the UN chaired an emergency meeting of the Security Council, intended to pull Putin back from the very line he'd just crossed. Ukraine's ambassador had stern words for his Russian counterpart.
Because it's too late, my dear colleagues, to speak about de-escalation. Too late. The Russian president declared a war on the record. Should I play the video of your president? Ambassador, shall I do that right now, or you can't confirm it?
Other UN representatives stressed the gravity of the situation.
Russia's attack on Ukraine is tantamount to an attack on the UN and every member state in the chamber tonight.
As reports of explosions in cities across Ukraine emerge, the Russian Foreign Ministry said it is only targeting military infrastructure. But while air sirens blare above Kyiv, many fear Putin's move may be the start of something much darker. Alex Chen and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has condemned Russia's violation of Ukrainian sovereignty, joining the long list of countries who have expressed support for Ukraine. Taiwan has concluded a national security meeting to consider its own sanctions against Russia. Jaime Ocon reports.
Russia's military actions in Ukraine are raising concerns across the world. More than 8,000 kilometers away in Taiwan, officials are eager to find a peaceful solution.
政府密切注视关于俄乌情势的发展。我国作为国际社会的一员，对于有助于和平解决相关争议，我们都会尽最大的努力。
Along with countries like the US, Germany, and Australia, Taiwan is considering its own set of sanctions against Russia, including an export ban on semiconductors. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has called on the government to stay alert for any attempt to use Ukraine's situation to stoke fears in Taiwan in relation to China. China claims Taiwan as a breakaway province, and there are fears of a similar operation here as was undertaken in Ukraine.
我认为台湾当局有些人借乌克兰问题来蹭热点和碰瓷儿是不明智的行为。那么台湾的确不是乌克兰，台湾从来都是中国领土不可分割的一部分，这是无可辩驳的历史和法理事实。
Taiwan said it will continue to strengthen military preparedness across the Taiwan Strait. It hopes that the global response to the attack on Ukraine will serve as an example of support for democracy in the face of aggression from those who oppose it. Chris Ma and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
As we mentioned, Taiwan is watching the situation in Ukraine closely. I spoke to Miles Yu, a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. He was a former senior policy advisor on China to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo during the Trump administration. I asked him whether parallels can be made with Taiwan's position in the shadow of neighboring China, which claims the country.
I was watching Vladimir Putin making a long speech, trying to justify very painfully his impending action against Ukraine. One of the most interesting things he was saying that he didn't believe the nation of Ukraine actually exists, which is kind of bizarre and very strange. He believed Ukraine was just an empty concept. Had there not been the Soviet Union, there would not have been the nation and country and people of Ukraine. Which brings me to the issue of Taiwan. This is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party thinks of Taiwan. In their revisionist view, Taiwan doesn't exist. 23 million people, free, democratic, doesn't even measure in their mind because they try to sort of squeeze Taiwan into oblivion in international space.
How valid are the concerns that if Russia invades Ukraine, Beijing will take advantage of the attention being focused in Eastern Europe and increase its aggressions against Taiwan?
I think that depends on several calculations, depends on how wise or unwise the Chinese leadership might be. On the one hand, there is this tendency, this kind of egomaniac thinking that somehow China has become stronger than all the adversaries, including the United States. So that gives it illusion. You know, in the 1960s, 70s, just like Mao believed that the Chinese Communist Party was so strong, there is this tendency of so-called the Eastern winds overpower the Western winds, 东风压倒西风. So that gives you some kind of a proletarian communist chutzpah and make China very, very aggressive in its global outlook. And I think that right now there is a similar thinking in Beijing that somehow China's time has come. It's time for China to show its muscle. So that's very dangerous. So this is very similar to what Vladimir Putin is doing right now in Ukraine. On the other hand, if you have any sense of reality, if you have any sense of balance, then you would really know that if China takes any military action similar to the one that Vladimir Putin is taking in Ukraine, China is not Russia, because what China will face is a coalition of states, of nations surrounding China's borders.
Does the Asia Pacific need its own NATO?
In other words, United States has a very good alliance agreement with, say, individual countries such as Japan, Philippines, or South Korea, but there is no multilateral alliance the like of which we see in Europe, which is NATO. It's a time for nation leaders to really think about this possibility because there is a common threat and there is a common value to defend, and there is the urgency to reevaluate our bilateral framework toward alliance and to make it more multilateral.
Taiwan says it will ease some COVID-19 prevention measures starting in March. The announcement came as the country recorded 80 new cases on Thursday, which included 7 local infections. Starting March 7th, business travellers will be allowed to enter the country and the quarantine period for all travellers will be cut from 14 to 10 days. Domestic restrictions will also ease from the start of the next month, allowing people to remove masks when exercising, taking photos and driving with family. Commuters will be able to eat and drink on mass transportation, and supermarkets, malls and traditional markets will be allowed to offer free samples once again. The World Health Organization says that the number of COVID-19 infections and deaths declined significantly last week. The WHO recorded 12 million new infections globally, down 21% compared to the week before. 67,000 deaths were recorded during that period, an 8% drop. However, not all countries see the improvement in Asia. In Asia, Singapore's daily COVID-19 cases hit a near record 20,000 infections on Wednesday. That was second only to the 26,000 reported the day before. According to the nation's health minister, it may take a few weeks before the current transmission wave peaks and subsides. South Korea reported a record high of 170,000 daily new cases on Thursday. The infections spiked from nearly 100,000 within a day. An explosive rise in infections has been seen in the nation since mid-January, when Omicron first emerged as the country's dominant strain. The WHO is creating a global training centre to help poorer countries make vaccines using messenger RNA technology, the kind used in Moderna and BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines. The idea is to help such countries get more access to vaccines and other life-saving treatments. Louise Watt reports.
Poorer countries have struggled to get their hands on vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the World Health Organization is working to get vaccine technology into their hands. The WHO's Director General says there's an urgent need to increase vaccine production in low and middle-income countries.
Vaccines have helped to change the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. But this scientific triumph has been undermined by vast inequities in access to these life-saving tools. Much of this inequity has been driven by the fact that globally vaccine production is concentrated in a few mostly high-income countries.
The WHO's answer? An mRNA technology transfer hub, which they're setting up in South Korea.
The aim of the hub is to provide a facility where manufacturers from low and middle-income countries can receive training in how to produce certain vaccines and the licenses to do so. We believe the mRNA Technology Transfer Hub holds huge promise, not just for increasing access to vaccines against COVID-19, but also for other diseases including malaria, tuberculosis, and cancer.
The new hub will share messenger RNA technology that has been developed by the WHO and partners in South Africa. They are trying to reverse engineer the Moderna vaccine without Moderna's help. But even though they probably won't be able to create any usable shots until late next year or even 2024, the WHO's chief scientist says it won't be a wasted effort.
I think this technology and this whole process of empowering and building capacity in places around the world will not only enable more work on vaccines of other public health importance like TB, like dengue, like chikungunya and other diseases, but also serve, as our backup plan for the next pandemic.
The idea is that vaccine production could be scaled up quickly should a new pathogen surface. So in that instance, poorer countries won't be left behind. Patrick Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, although Taiwan became the first country in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage, for many couples, the right to marry still remains out of reach. Details after the break.
1947年228事件中，台湾人被迫害、被屠杀，但是台中嘛有一群青年组成武装27部队，勇敢骑车对抗不义的政府。当年27部队部队长张永仁，竟被队长吴金岛、督级队长陈明忠以及食雪红的子弟兵蔡碧芬、 陈英贤70几年后现身说法，请大家来观看武装台中纪录片，见证台湾人这段恐怖的历史。
Welcome to the Mando. 你想住哪里
Where do you want to live?
我要住哪里？看你表现啊。
那你家人呢？你家有几个人 ？How many people do you have in your family?
我爸、我妈、阿嬷、大舅舅、大舅舅、小舅妈、大婶婶、小叔叔、小婶婶、小姑、他们的老婆，这样讲。
And where in Taipei do you live?
Wait, you know that? You've been to my place before.
That must have been a very insignificant experience in my life.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. In 2019, Taiwan made history by becoming the first country in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. But as John Van Trieste reports, current rules mean that for many couples, the right to marry remains out of reach.
Japanese citizen Eizaburo Ariyoshi and his Taiwanese partner, who goes by the nickname Ashu, have been together for more than 6 years. They've tried to register as a married couple, but have twice been turned away.
私たちは戸籍事務所に婚姻届の提出に向かいました。しかし、私が日本人であるという理由で受理されず、否担に触れました。
Even though same-sex marriage is legal in Taiwan, under current rules, foreign nationals can only marry a same-sex partner if their home country has also legalized same-sex marriage, which Japan has not. The rule has affected the lives of many transnational same-sex couples in Taiwan. It forced Ashu and Ariyoshi to live apart for a month.
曾经有发生过，就是他学中文的学程已经结束了，然后他没有办法就是获得学生签证，所以他就必须回去日本，1个月十分的漫长。
Now they are suing the government to get the restriction lifted. And they are not the first. 3 transnational couples managed to win exemptions in court, but their cases were considered legal exceptions and did not set a precedent. Taiwan's cabinet, the Executive Yuan, says it has been working to amend the law. But the process has taken more than a year, prompting criticism from the government watchdog. Ashu and Ariyoshi have given up on waiting for the government. They hope their legal action will finally bring the right to marry to all. Klein Wang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
This coming weekend is a 3-day holiday in Taiwan to mark Peace Memorial Day on February 28th. While it's a vacation for most, for many others, it's also an opportunity to reflect on one of the darkest moments in the nation's history. Let's factor in the numbers as we prepare to mark this watershed moment. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the 228 incident, the worst massacre in Taiwan's recent history. As many as 30,000, mostly local Taiwanese, are thought to have been killed over 3 weeks, including almost an entire generation of Taiwan's elite. Previously, Taiwan had been a colony of Japan for 50 years, but following the defeat of Germany and the Axis powers, Japan was forced to surrender Taiwan. 228 occurred in the second year of the takeover of Taiwan by Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of the Republic of China, which later lost the Chinese Civil War and retreated to Taiwan. The massacre was triggered on the 27th of February when government officers beat a woman they accused of selling contraband cigarettes. They then opened fire on the surrounding crowd. On the 28th of February, angry citizens marched on the governor's office and were fired on together with innocent bystanders. Riots spread within days across the entire country. Taiwan's 6 million people had initially embraced the ROC's Nationalist Party, the Kuomintang, as liberators from the Japanese. But endemic corruption brought the country to its knees. The once rich island nation, endured high inflation, unemployment, and was on the brink of starvation. These were the underlying conditions of 228. The incident's scars remain today. To discuss why the 228 incident is important to understanding Taiwan today, I spoke to Professor Huang Zhengyi, a member of the Taiwan Association for Truth and Reconciliation and research professor at Academia Sinica. I began by asking him whether Taiwan would be in a position to prevent a repeat of history.
I would say if something like 228 happened in Taiwan, that would not from the internal or domestic politics. It probably will from a foreign country, especially like the People's Republic of China always try to invest Taiwan by military force. So if that kind of situation happened in Taiwan, we actually have to defend ourselves. And a democracy is fragile if it is divided and cannot have a very strong might against the outer force. So I would say if that kind of thing happened in Taiwan, the Taiwanese people probably have to unite together and to think about how to protect our democracy.
What can we say Taiwan has learned from the 228 incident?
Probably we would now compare it with Hong Kong, but actually the 228 is the prelude to the later political oppression lasting for almost 40 years. Things happen in Hong Kong probably is the beginning of the longer political oppression. I think the most important thing about the comparison of the Hong Kong lessons in today and the 228 lessons in 1947 is that, well, a group of people, they want to have the opportunity or the right to self-government. The Taiwanese people never gave up their hope for self-government, and they struggle with that. And after 40 years, gradually we achieved step by step to the kind of democracy our ancestors or our parents, grandparents would like to have. I think that's the most meaningful lesson.
Peace Memorial Day marks what's become known as the 228 incident. In 1947, days of brutal crackdowns on anti-government protests killed tens of thousands of civilians, keeping it relevant to a new generation. Taiwanese indie band Sorry Youth this month released a music video in collaboration with a renowned former political prisoner and artist. Rick Gov't reports.
In this music video for Into the Silence, 73-year-old artist Chen Wu-jun paints pictures of those disappeared by Taiwan's government. A former political prisoner himself, Chen and his work serve as a reminder of the damage inflicted by authoritarian rule in Taiwan. Popular indie band Sorry Youth sing their songs in Taiwanese, a language that was repressed during that time.
We think the topic of this song can correspond with the topic of his painting. And the director used an absent family to depict the painting. So we think it's a very successful combination.
The music video commemorates the February 28 incident in 1947. The administration at the time brutally suppressed anti-government protests. Tens of thousands were massacred in what became a pivotal moment in Taiwan's history, ushering in decades of martial law under the Kuomintang, or KMT. These buildings were once military courts and detention centres for political prisoners, but in 2007, the government turned them into a human rights memorial and museum. It is a favoured venue for events like these that both confront Taiwan's checkered past as well as contemplate the country's future. The music video was premiered here, and among the audience, many young Taiwanese keen to explore the country's authoritarian period.
其實我感覺最感動，因為本身我本地就介意這個歌，就是我本地就介意拍攝。
近幾年，就關於台灣歷史的研究，還有一些作品都越來越多。對，那我其實還蠻喜歡看這類作品，所以我會覺得蠻重要的。
For years, the truth about crackdowns on dissent during authoritarian rule, such as the February 28 incident, were obscured. Now, this past has been finding its way into Taiwanese popular culture. Gongsheng, a music festival set up in 2013, has become an annual event marking the February 28 incident. The students that first organised it say they wanted to turn a national wound into an opportunity for understanding. Heavy metal band Thonic have dedicated a whole album to exploring the massacre.
I think a lot of these approach coming from obviously a relearning, because at least for my generation, we weren't really taught in depth about this violent past. It's usually just a page, right, in a textbook, but wasn't sort of more explicitly developed or explored.
Taiwan is often described as an enthusiastic or even raucous democracy, with high voter turnout and an engaged civil society. But the country fought hard for its democracy, only ending decades of authoritarian rule in 1987. Taiwan's current government has promised to right the wrongs of the nation's dark past, a process known as transitional justice.
I think a lot of young people today think about issues of transnational justice, not only in relation to the KMT government, but also think about it more diversely, such as including LGBTQ equality. I would say that's also part of the agenda of transitional justice, as well as a lot of young people today care about environmental issues.
Through art and music, young Taiwanese are taking the initiative to reflect on their country's past and to forge its future. Damon Lin and Rick Gov't for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally today, we leave you with some images of the newborn Patas monkey in Taipei Zoo. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app. Stay safe and see you next time.